Hello all, this is Al Finch. Today I bring to you a very special figure of interest, the man of the hour, Dungeon Crawler Carl. So a lot of folks are in on Dungeon Crawler Carl. I am one of them. I recently discovered the novels in the past year. Those of you that are not in the know, Dungeon Crawler Carl has been published since 2020. Starting with the initial book, Dungeon Crawler Carl, and currently is on the 8th book in its series, A Parade of Horribles, which came out just this past year. Dungeon Crawler Carl features a gentleman named Carl and his cat, Princess Donut. And essentially they are in the midst of a alien invasion that completely takes over the Earth, and then pits the survivors of the invasion against one another in a awful multi-level dungeon. I just want everyone to be aware that I will be giving spoilers beyond this, but there you go. That's the kind of overhead view of the book. For those of you that really enjoy Dungeon Crawler Carl, today what I'm hoping to do is make some recommendations about other works of fiction that you might enjoy if you enjoy this work. I'm also going to talk a little bit about how you might adopt Dungeon Crawler Carl into your role-playing game. I will say that we are not going to touch on the Dungeon Crawler Carl official role-playing game that will be coming out in November of this year. I don't know very much about that. What I'm going to do is focus on pre-existing systems and how you might adapt the material from Dungeon Crawl Carl into those systems. I also might touch in very briefly at the end on some Dungeon Crawler Carl in Magic the Gathering. All right, I guess first things first, we should probably introduce some books. One of the things that I've noted about Dungeon Crawler Carl is that it fits in a particular genre where essentially the main characters are being forced to play in a deadly game. This is a genre that's been around for a while, and there's lots of different things I could refer you to, but since we're talking about stuff like role-playing games and Dungeons and Dragons, I thought I might pull out this old chestnut, Andre Norton's Quag Keep. This is probably the first official Dungeons and Dragons novelization. The author, Andre Norton, is said to have played in a game with Gary Gygax and was inspired to write this book, which is apparently set in the world of Greyhawk. Look at the back cover here. It says here, "Do you like war games? Can you believe playing pieces might come alive? Adventures keynote offered in this scientific fantasy where the imaginary becomes real. 6 road companions travel under a wizard's geas to encounter and destroy unknown evil. Descriptive delineation, action, and special powers hold the identifying reader in the company of the elf Ingriga, Bard Windmare, Cleric Dev Dine, Swordsman Milo Jagan, Lizardman Gulf, Pseudo-Dragon of Frita, Berserker Nile Fangtooth, and Battlemaid Yvel." This could be a set of crawlers from Dungeon Crawl Carl, and crawlers from Dungeon Crawler Carl could well fit into this book. It is acknowledged that the characters are being controlled by otherworldly forces, in this case the actual referee of the game, and there's some kind of interesting weird sequences where the players and the characters that they're playing kind of get mixed up with each other. So it is very much where a game starts to come to life. I would say overall it was a decent read. Not the best I've read, but serviceable. And it is a real part of history. So if you're interested in this kind of fiction, I encourage you to check out Quag Keep by Andre Norton. Something that I found particularly interesting and appealing was this book, Dream Park, by Larry Niven and Stephen Barnes. This was released in 1981 and is actually the first of a larger series. There's been, I don't know how many sequels, but I've read at least 4 now, and they are centered in a slightly different setting. We have, again, people playing in a game, but they're usually willingly doing so. Dream Park is very much as if something like Walt Disney World had decided to optimize itself for role-playing game players. They have these gigantic virtual reality domes or areas where people can assume characters, different classes, different levels, battling, pitting their wits against a dungeon master. It is top-notch. I recommend it if you're into, again, this kind of game versus reality genre. If you are, say, more contemporarily entertained, you probably are already aware of this, but I'm going to share it anyway. You might be entertained by The Hunger Games. I personally did not enjoy reading the book. I only read this first one. The movies I found were more entertaining for me. But it plays right into this theme where we have people kind of conscripted into a deadly game and are pitted against one another, being manipulated by political forces. Same vein, one that I actually enjoyed more, and probably aimed directly at my generation, is Ready Player One. If you are of a certain age, 1970s, 1980s were your childhood, you probably would enjoy reading this book. The cultural references in this one go deep. It helped me remember quite a few things that I experienced when I was younger, and it was all wrapped up in a fairly entertaining story. I think the author, Ernest Cline, had produced a sequel. This series of 2 books, I think, are worthwhile, although I think they're particularly appealing, again, to kind of a Gen X audience. The movie adaptation, I think, has broader appeal, but was not as good. So again, recommending Ready Player One if you remember the 1980s fondly. Maybe you've got some younger folks in your life. Not that necessarily they have to be young to enjoy this, but Minecraft, the omnibus collection of the graphic novels that were put out in the I think late 19s and early 20s, 2023 is when this came out, is worthwhile if you're sharing these kinds of things with somebody that enjoys video games that are still in the public spotlight. Minecraft, has been there for years. It's a staple. Adults enjoy it as well as children. But this is one that I think can be recommended for younger audiences. I would not share A Parade of Horribles or Dungeon Crawler Carl or any of the books in that series with young folks unless you're ready to answer some very awkward questions. All right, so those were the books that I thought matched up well with people who might enjoy Dungeon Crawler Carl. Let's talk about a couple of movies. Also focused on good old 1980s, we have Arnold Schwarzenegger's appearance in The Running Man. This was directed by Paul Michael Glaser and released in 1987. It's based on a novella that was released by Stephen King under the pseudonym Richard Bachman, I believe, the Bachman books. This was a lot of fun. It is a dystopian future setting for this one, where propaganda is rampant and people get their kicks by watching enemies of the state and criminals chased down by kind of these gladiators that use deadly equipment like chainsaws and hockey sticks with razor blades attached to their ends. Highly entertaining movie. You might recognize some of the folks if you're into the 80s and you haven't seen it. Probably ought to check it out. Another item, more recent, but still very much in the genre of people pitted against one another by other outside forces. Battle Royale. This said to be a potential inspiration for the Hunger Games, and this was produced in Japan, and I'm going to butcher the name, but it was directed by Kenji Fukusaku and released in 2000. This particular set of movies, the first one is the real gem, features high school students, freshman class, picked at random, dropped on an island, and then forced to face off one against one another. I think better than Hunger Games, more dramatic, more entertaining, also a heck of a lot more gory. Not necessarily something you want to share with your younger ones that enjoyed the Hunger Games, again, unless you feel they're ready for it. So there you go. Some movies as well as books to go along with anyone that might enjoy the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. Now let's talk a little bit about what one might do if they want to play in the Dungeon Crawler Carl universe without necessarily having to go for the official role-playing game. I think probably one of the better systems for doing this would probably be the Palladium system. Now, I'm not deeply experienced with Palladium books and its megaverse, but I am a fan of their Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness series, which I believe has been recently re-released. And I think it's a particularly good fit for Dungeon Crawler Carl. For those that read Dungeon Crawler Carl, you know that there's an awful lot of anthropomorphized animals in there, including the main character, Princess Donut. There's a number of human-animal kind of hybrids or in-between. So I think this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness book actually would work quite well for depicting those characters, right? They have an apocalyptic setting for this universe. I think it's called After the Bomb. They have rules not only for animal characters, all right, but they also have rules if you go into Trans-Dimensional Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is another supplement that I believe just recently got re-released, for human characters as well. Humans with mental powers and also potentially magic. So I think, again, a particularly good fit. And I suspect that there are people that play in the Palladium system that are yelling at the screen right now saying, oh my goodness, there's this X, Y, and Z supplement that would be so much better. It's all right. Leave those in the comments. I would love to hear what else in the system would fit. There is so much going on in here already. I think that these just 2 books on their own would be more than enough to run a good Dungeon Crawler Carl game. Maybe, though, you're not into Palladium and the game system that they have. maybe you want Dungeons and Dragons. All right, well, I think we can make a recommendation for a system there as well. I'm not going to say classic D&D is a great fit. There's too much weirdness going on. But I will say that something that plays with the old system, like Gamma World or its analog here, Mutant Future, would be an excellent choice. Another kind of post-apocalyptic scenario with lots of choices for characters and character skills, right? Here in Mutant Future, you have the options for both human and animal characters, all types of mutants, right? All types of technological strangeness mixed in with kind of archaic weapons. It is, I think, a good setting if you're interested in running a Dungeon Crawler Carl type game. I think you could easily take creatures from this and your regular Dungeons and Dragons system and mix and match, which is very much what they do in Dungeon Crawler Carl. They talk about all types of things in that system. There are folks that like swords, there are people that like bombs, there are people that use lasers and shields. It's all in here, fairly easy to use. But what, you still want just regular Dungeons and Dragons style stuff? Maybe Mutant Future is just too much for you? All right, well, I think we have the Splat books from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition that can help you out. For those of you that aren't familiar with this series, these came out in the 1990s during 2nd edition. This particular one, the complete book of the Humanoids, premiered in 1993. And there's a whole line of these, a whole bunch of them, where they provide extra information on class features and races. I picked this one in particular just because I think it offers a really good mix of potential new races, some classic monsters that we're talking about from Dungeons and Dragons. They've got things like, the Beastman and Bugbears and Giants and Gnolls, Hobgoblins, Kobolds, Lizardmen, Minotaur, Ogres, Pixies, Satyrs, Dinosaur People, Swan Maze, Wemmicks. They're all in here, okay? So you can make one of these non-human characters and not just a plain old boring human fighter if you add this into the mix. It uses the classic Dungeons and Dragons system from the 1990s. Might need a little bit of updating if we're talking about things like ascending armor class and stuff like that. You might have to make some translations, but all that information is perfectly usable and helpful. On top of that, not only do they have information on playing character races that are of these weird humanoid monsters, but they also do have a number of kits. The Dungeon Carl scenario has a lot of characters that have a lot of diverse classes. Yes, there are fighters and wizards and clerics, but there's also weird things that you don't normally get. So these types of kits can help diversify and let you move a little bit beyond some of those particular classes. They are, I think, rather basic compared to some of the stuff that we're used to seeing in Dungeon Crawler Carl, but at least they're a place to start, giving you some variation beyond the regular classes. All right, so if you need to go for the more gonzo, I'm going to suggest checking out some zines. This is a set of books, zines, that were released by a gentleman named J.V. West. I happened to play with him a few times, managed to get in on a couple of his games, really enjoyed his work. He has published this zine, Black Pudding, a number of times and has done omnibus collections. I'll try and make sure that I include links to a lot of this, especially the more obscure stuff, in the comments or the notes at least. But here, this Black Pudding zine, this was released around 2016, and it uses very much the same system as classic Dungeons and Dragons, but it introduces a lot of gonzo, weird stuff. All right. It has, some of the classics in there too. We've got chainmail chicks and sinewy barbarians, lots of different strange weapons and swords, and then also kind of these more specialized classes or kind of combo simplified things, almost more like the race is class type stuff. Sword Slinger, Black Knight. They have weird creatures from the bestiary. I believe there's a number of mercenaries that you can choose from. They have animal people in here. This is a cat girl and a Barbara bunny characters. They have very specific special abilities. They call these the meat shields of the bleeding ox. So these are examples of oddball NPCs that you could introduce. There's even some lairs and things like that. Little adventures and encounters. The entire series, in my opinion, is just gold. There's multiples. I think I've got the first 3, but I think they've done at least 5 at this point. And yeah, there's a lot of very interesting material that you could use to take people by surprise and give your characters some interesting options beyond boring old fighter and the like, using the traditional Dungeons & Dragons system. I love the art on this. I enjoy the presentation, top notch. Another thing that people might note is Dungeon Crawler Carl has pets. All right. Again, light spoilers here. The main character, Princess Donut, has a pet raptor, and she uses it in battle. There's even, in one of the later books, situations that are very close, obviously meant an homage to things like Pokemon. So what can you do if you're going to be running with pets and Pokemon type battles? I'm going to recommend checking out this book, Battlezoo Eldamon. I'm probably butchering that. This was released in 2024, and if you're interested in having creatures that can ally with your characters, this is the place to look. They have all types of little cute animals that can help in battle, but eventually grow in power. These are, very Pokemon-esque, but essentially translated into a nice D20 system, highly compatible with things like Dungeons and Dragons. It's a wonderfully illustrated book, very whimsical. I think fits right in with the Dungeon Crawler Carl aesthetic of having all these weird creatures that you can ally with and take on as pets. Another thing that is a major feature in Dungeon Crawler Carl are gods. There are deities that appear with some regularity and have a huge impact on the plot. So you could, go with some classic mythology here, but I think it would be a lot more fun to delve into supplements like this one. This is The Unknown Gods, originally published by the Judges Guild, and may actually now exist in different forms. I haven't checked to see if there is a published version more recently through Goodman Games, but they've been doing a lot of Judges Guild stuff. I would be shocked if this wasn't in the repertoire these days. The Unknown Gods includes a huge list of different types of gods, and they give classic Dungeons and Dragons style battle stats. It's not perfect. You have to add in some statistics, but these weirdos would match up really well with the weirdos gods that are portrayed in the Dungeon Crawler Carl books. They have good long descriptions for each one, some of their combat capabilities, of course, their specialties. They fit, I think, very nicely into Dungeon Crawler Carl and let you play up with these ideas with weird gods. All right, entering into our last section, we need to talk about adventures. Dungeon Crawler Carl is a very interesting storyline. We have alien species setting up the equivalent of a Dungeons and Dragons dungeon and lacing it with creatures and references to Earth culture, but kind of seen through an alien lens. The whole thing is run by a malicious artificial intelligence who often will set up some of the most crazy scenarios, and we need adventures that can match that kind of creativity. So we don't want to run classic Dungeons and Dragons scenarios. Instead, we might go with some more offbeat things. I am very familiar with the Lamentations of the Flame Princess line, and so I'm going to share some of the titles from there that I fit rather well. These particular titles from the line are strange, bizarre, but also familiar because they touch on some items in popular culture. Now, this first one here is Galileo 2 Judgment Day. It was released in 2023. It features a main antagonist that is very much like the Terminator crossed with a WWE wrestler. It's a nigh indestructible juggernaut, a robot that the players must foil in its task. And it's a great entertaining read. I haven't had a chance to read it, or to rather play it yet, but it feels like this kind of weirdness would be the kind of thing that would match with Dungeon Crawler Carl. Another set of adventures that you might check out might include the Doom Cave of the Crystal-Headed Children by James Raggi. This particular volume was released in 2014. This one might be, I'm not 100% certain, might be available as a pay what you want on Drive-Thru RPG, because it was a free RPG Day giveaway. And this little gem is very much in the pattern of weirdness, where we have Dungeons and Dragons style characters clashing with an antagonist who controls a bunch of kind of children with the same characteristics. If any of you are familiar with the classic horror movie Village of the Damned from 1960, I think directed by Wolf Rilla, this is a direct homage to that. You have a pop culture reference that also puts the characters in a particularly horrible circumstance where they are having to fight children, as you can tell from the cover of the book right here. There are scenarios very reminiscent of this. A lot of catch-22s, a lot of damned if you do, damned if you don't scenarios, and this captures that quite nicely. In the Lamentations line is a particular author that I plays straight into all of this in their terms of pop culture reference, and that is Kelvin Green. And a number of books here that I can recommend, adventures that I think would be great, would not steal directly from the Dungeon Crawler Carl books, but would be strongly reminiscent of. This first one here is The Green Messiah, which was released in 2021. I would describe this as no less than an evil Superman crossed with the invasion of the Body Snatchers. So very reminiscent of some superhero lore in classic 50s science fiction. This one, if you can't tell, more than meets the eye, deals with space aliens that like to assume the form of common objects, like one might say Transformers. They can change back and forth between their alien and mundane forms at will. This one is not a Lamentations publication, but it does pretty much fit the bill. This one, I believe, was Games Omnivorous, the Seed release. I'm not going to open this one up because, you know, I might hurt somebody's delicate sensibilities, but, you know, who am I kidding? If you read Dungeon Crawler Carl, your sensibilities have been well trampled upon. Anyway, this one I would describe as Men in Black meeting cults and Lovecraft mythos style aliens. It's another great adventure that I think fits the bill for completely gonzo, bizarre yet familiar at the same time. Maybe you don't want one-shot adventures or short adventures. Maybe you want a more in-depth thing, a deeper dungeon. Well, my final recommendation might be something like this. The Anomalous Subsurface Environment dungeon. I only have the initial book. I have not had an opportunity to run it, but what I have read of this series so far very much brings to mind the kind of environment that the folks in the Dungeon Crawler Carl books are dealing with. Bizarre dungeon environment, rife with anachronisms and bizarre creatures. This one will give you, I think, days and days of potential playtime. And I believe there's at least a couple of volumes of this now, maybe even a collection. So there we go. Those are my recommendations for anyone that would like to play with a Dungeon Crawler Carl style game, but not necessarily leave an old system behind or pick up the brand new role-playing game. I am myself very interested in the new game, but I like my old stuff and I like the stuff that I have on hand and I want to use it. So if you've got any of these things, I think they would fit right in. I think they would work well. One last thing, many of you are used to me throwing in a little bit of magic content. I actually have something that would be very in-depth, probably worthy of a separate own video, but I will give you all a little teaser of that. I have here a stack of cards that I think would probably fit really well into a Dungeon Crawler Carl Universes Beyond set. These are cards that I think fit the flavor. I'm not going to show you any other than this original one. This is Barrett Avalanche Leader. This cost 2 generic, a red and a green, a legendary creature human rebel with reach. and it has an ability that says Avalanche. Whenever an equipment you control enters, create a 2/2 red rebel creature token. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, attach up to 1 target equipment you control to target rebel you control, and it's a 4/4. This to me feels like what Carl would be like if he had a Magic the Gathering card. Anyone that reads the Dungeon Crawler Carl series knows that you know, he's got a bunch of magical tools. He's good at rallying people to the cause. And he's an inadvertent leader, right? Whether he wants to be it or not. So I think this fits really well for the title character. If you're interested in seeing what other cards I think might fit into a Dungeon Crawler Carl style Magic theme deck, I encourage you to check out future videos. Who knows, maybe I'll get that released in the next week or so. I'll put a link whenever it shows up so that people can find it more easily. All right, I think this video, however, has gone on long enough. Hopefully you all have enjoyed this kind of exploration of Dungeon Crawler Carl in gaming. If you've got other ideas, some things that you think might fit in, I'd love to hear about it. More recommendations for things that fit the people in the dangerous game genre. Go ahead, share them with us in the comments. As for me, I'm going to go and rest. Ta-ta for now.